Some would say the CAA is starting to fall apart. So, if that's the case, what is North Carolina A&T and Hampton's next move? Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. And if you're new to FanDuel, you get $150 back in bonus bets if you win a $5 bet, your first $5 bet. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We'll wrap up today's episode with a triumvirate of HBCU running backs who have now made it into NFL training camps. Prior to that, we'll go ahead and take a look at Tennessee State's major loss. Terrell Allen has entered the transfer portal and decided that he will be attending Tulane in the fall. But we kick it off with another bit of uncertainty, or rather a new bit of uncertainty, because that was Terrell Allen, but he's no longer that. But what is North Carolina A&T going to do next? The reason I bring up the Aggies as opposed to the Pirates is that Hampton's always talked like this is where they always wanted to be. This was going to be their end goal. And unless the end goal is just so terrible that you got to depart, it does seem like they would be the team who sits in whatever the CAA is going to be moving forward. Because everything I heard from, I believe, the president was, we've been trying to get to the CAA for years and years and years. And despite the CAA not being what it once was, right? It was the Colonial, now it's the Coastal. It used to have teams like James Madison and Delaware and Richmond. All three of those teams are on the way out the door if they haven't already left, like James Madison has. So it's not exactly the same conference that you thought you were going to step into. It's not exactly the same conference that you were just dreaming of entering for all of those years. But still, a dream is a dream. And I would assume that if you get there, it will probably take you a lot to want to depart. So I'll focus on North Carolina A&T, who did not seem to be in love with the CAA prior to going there, right? Like, yeah, it's like guys these days, right? Guys these days, when it comes to social media, they fall in love with a girl on her social media. You ain't even DM'd her yet. You have no idea who this person is. We do this in real life too, but I think that it happens a lot of times on social media because you get to see so much of a person. They always at the tip of your thumb, right? That was Hampton. They had stalked this CAA's Instagram page. Hampton had already went through all of the likes. He went to the Instagram, went through all the tag photos, see what the friends. They had a vision of who the CAA was prior to getting there. And you know what? Maybe it's not the way it was, but a lot of times it takes you a while to get out of that mindset. North Carolina A&T seemed to be the ones who seen a picture, double tapped, and said, I'm about to shoot this DM. And what do you know? I made it. So now I'm here in the CAA. I use all of these analogies to say North Carolina A&T will be my focal point because everything I've seen, all of the chatter that I've heard is more so around North Carolina A&T leaving, though I did see one funny meme about Hampton saying, yeah, we ain't about to weather this. We're going to leave that to A&T. But other than that, it's been A&T people discussing their future. So let's speak about possibilities. I do not enter this forum being the all-knower. I don't enter this forum pretending to say I have all of the information, all the inside facts. I do not pretend to do that. What I can do is lay out a bunch of potential situations that could happen, a couple of hypotheticals, and then also the background on how we got here. So I'm going to do what I know how to do well. So let's get into the background and why this conversation even exists right now at this current moment. That's because you have Richmond, who just left the CAA in order to go to the Patriot League. I don't know if this becomes a conversation if the Patriot League is not looked at as a step down, if it's not looked at as a move of, we just got to get out of here. Now, let me say this. Richmond only moved their football team because that's the only thing that was in the CAA at the time. And I will get back to that when we get to North Carolina A&T, because that lends itself to one of the hypotheticals that I've heard, and I want to kind of shed a little bit of light on, because I don't think it's too bad. But overall, Richmond left. Some people feel like they didn't like the expansion teams. Richmond says they didn't like the expansion strategy. But this is what's been happening. The CAA is no longer what it used to be. It's no longer viewed or has the same teams that are kind of the calling cards of the conference. James Madison, they left for the FBS. Delaware, they're leaving for the FBS. Richmond, they're leaving, but they're staying in the FCS. So that's a little bit of a difference. But hey, whatever. But when James Madison left, that's when the CAA started pulling out all of the Big South teams. They said, you know what? We need to expand, and we're going to use you. That's exactly who we going to use. So they said in 2022, let's go grab Hampton and Monmouth. Cool. Then in 2023, they grabbed Campbell and they grabbed North Carolina A&T. Then in this past season, they're taking Bryant. So that's 5 teams in the course of 3 years who have left the Big South in order to go into the CAA. Okay, cool. According to Richmond and all of the people in that area, Richmond does not like the expansion strategy. So they say, you know what? We got to get up out of here. What is North Carolina A&T's next move? I think that this is very interesting. The first thing I could look at is them just moving football. The reason I say that is because maybe, and it seemed like North Carolina A&T had kind of a holistic view of the CAA, bigger than just football. So if it's kind of crumbling from a football standpoint, you can just move your football team, and that would be okay. There's no problem in that. Matter of fact, your whole squad joined the CAA a year prior. All your group of schools, or excuse me, group of teams, except for bowling, and then football. Football stayed in the Big South for an extra year and did what they needed to do. But yeah, it's one of those things where you could move your football team. I don't know if I do any of the moving. Here's the other thing. I don't know if I do any of the moving, because if North Carolina A&T moved with national glasses on, of, you know what, we're not just going to go to the Celebration Bowl. We want to go for the FCS playoffs. We want to do this, that, and the third. Then this still makes sense. And I would try to weather the storm to see if the CAA is still going to put out playoff teams, plural, because they put out multiple playoff teams over the last decade plus. They put out successful playoff teams. So it'll be very interesting to see what route do you go. Do you try to weather a storm? Do you even see if it is a storm, right? Because there might not even be a storm to weather. The idea that CAA is falling apart could be a gross overstatement. I think I would wait to see what it all entails before I make a decision. I wouldn't want to. I'm not a fan of the musical chairs. I'm not a fan of the go to this conference and that conference, this conference, that conference. It's a little too loosey-goosey for me, to be honest with you. I would prefer for North Carolina A&T to stay in a conference for a little bit longer, right? They left the MEAC, then they went to the Big South, left the Big South in a year for everything except for football. And now you're in the CAA for your first year in football, maybe 2 years, because you're obviously going to play this season. And now you're already going to be out. I don't know. To me, that's just a lot of movement, and it's not a lot of roots, and it's not going to lead itself to a lot of success. We saw what happened with Prunty and the Pirates in Hampton. They left the MEAC, boom, had a year, and every year he was struggling because he was getting acclimated to a new conference. That and he might just not have been his cup of tea at that moment, right? But that's what you're looking at if you just keep moving around. The other thing is, like I said, just move football. The other one, go back to the MEAC. People have been talking about it. They'll welcome you. I'll welcome you. I've never been able to cover North Carolina A&T in the MEAC. I've never had that opportunity. I've never been able to cover Hampton in the MEAC. I've never had that opportunity. The best I get from North Carolina A&T is being able to watch them play North Carolina Central. That's the best I get from them. So maybe I can get the Aggies. I never had them in a Celebration Bowl. I wouldn't mind at least. I don't think the MEAC will mind. I don't think many of the members will mind. And the stigma around the MEAC changes a whole lot if North Carolina A&T comes back. It changes a whole lot if A&T and Hampton comes back. Because did I say Hamptons? North Carolina A&T and Hampton comes back. These things look a whole lot different if you get these other squads to come back. So now you done bumped up to 8 teams. Now you're looking a whole lot different. And we've been speaking about MEAC expansion. How about MEAC reunions? I think that these things are welcomed. I don't know if they're likely. We'll see. I don't know if the reasons they left the MEAC are no longer valid in their brain. Maybe that's just no longer really a quality reason to be gone. And now, hey, I like to come back. It feels like home. And I would assume that if you go to the MEAC, you're in the MEAC for the long haul. And you probably bring over more than just football if you go to the MEAC, honestly. But let's push forward. We're speaking about reunions. Unfortunately, we're going to push forward and talk about departures. Terrell Allen is gone. He's no longer a Tennessee State Tiger, and instead he's with the Green Wave out there in New Orleans, Louisiana. Welcome to Tulane. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. I got Luka versus Shea tonight. I'm excited, but you know what I actually want to point my attention to? I want to point my attention to Minnesota versus Denver. It's been a rough couple of games for the Timberwolves. It's been a rough couple of games. 3 losses in a row, and now the Nuggets are up 3-2. Who do you believe is going to take it? Are we going to have a 4-2? Going to run 4 games in a row for the Nuggets, the defending world champions? Are we going to see the Timberwolves fight back? I want to see a game 7. What about out there in Boston? It's Boston. Well, actually, I think Boston playing tonight. So let's go to Indianapolis. The Pacers have a home game for game 6. Are they going to be able to tie it up and take it back to Madison Square Garden? There's a lot of questions. Friday night. So is that Friday night? Thursday night? I don't know my days anymore. It's the NBA playoffs. Every day is the same to me. I'm still getting lost in time. So I would love for you to go to FanDuel.com and put some money down on all of these players. Tyrese Halliburton, 3-pointers made. Anthony Edwards points. Jokic assist. You know what I'm saying? Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart rebounds. All these things are available on FanDuel.com/LockedOn to make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, I just spoke about being lost. How about you go to Locked On Sports today? You can get lost in that 24/7 first of its kind live sports network on YouTube. You could get lost in that. So go ahead and go to Locked On Sports today. Subscribe to check out the local experts on a 24-hour stream. Now, we've looked at North Carolina A&T's potential next moves. We've spoken about it. Okay, cool. Now let's go into Terrell Allen because he has told us exactly what his next move is going to be, and that is transferring from North Carolina A&T to Tulane. I had some hope that Allen was going to return to Tennessee State. I had some hope because of the timeline that it happened. I had some thoughts that he was just keeping his options open. And you know what? That still could have been the case. Just because he didn't return to Tennessee State does not mean that he wasn't keeping his options open. The timing of his departure, the timing of him entering the transfer portal still tells me the same thing. It was a late decision. And when somebody of his status, one could assume he would have gotten a very early transfer portal offer. But you know what? When you're somebody of his status, it really doesn't matter when you get into the transfer portal. It doesn't. When you're a Buck Buchanan Award winner for the FCS Defensive Player of the Year, who cares if you enter the portal on the first day or the last day? People are coming to call it, and he decided to go the G5 route. I still think he was trying to keep his options open. He just got a better option out there with the Green Wave. That's it. You know what I'm saying? And for what he's trying to do, which is probably get drafted, I completely understand. Tulane is not a huge school. It is a group of 5 school, but I think that it's one that reasonably could move up to the Power 4 level. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't be surprising to me if you see them as a school that goes from G5. Actually, are they already Power 4? Did they already move up? Last time I checked, they were in the American Atlantic. But Let me see. And I think that's where they still are. Yeah, they're still in the American Atlantic, the American Athletics. So they're in the AAC. So yeah, this is a team that I could easily see joining a Big 12 if the Big 12 decides to continue to expand. I don't think they're gonna go to the SEC. And geographically, even though geography is getting pushed out the window in college football and realignment, that's starting to not matter at all. You got 2 teams on the West Coast playing in the Big 10. I'm looking at my map back here. Last time I checked, that's a pretty doggone far distance, right? But if you're going with geographical ties, the SEC, probably not. I just think it's unlikely that Tulane goes there. But the Big 12, I could see Tulane moving up to a Power 4 conference. Not in the time frame that Allen will be there, but I say that just to paint the picture of what type of school Allen is going to. There will be eyes on him at Tulane. There will probably be more eyes on him at Tulane than there is at Tennessee State. And that's just real. That's just the God's honest, right? And I know that Coach George is there. And maybe Eddie George is able to bring more eyes than the typical HBCU. I don't deny that. But I do believe that there's people who are legitimately checking for Tulane on a frequent basis. There's more of that than there is Tennessee State. And that's just, unfortunately, that's just a part of the game, right? At 280 pounds, nearly 280, I think he was listed at 275. So give or take 2 pounds, you could round up, could round down. But you're looking at a guy who, at his size, should be able to handle the move up in subdivision. He should be able to handle that move up to the AAC from the Big South OVC. I think that he's going to be well equipped to move on. I really do wish him luck. And I try to check out a couple of Tulane games every now and then. Believe it or not, I do try to check out a couple of Tulane games every now and then. So if I can check him out, I definitely will. And even if I can't, I'll be looking for him the same way that I did with Shul Tootin when he went to Virginia Tech. So I do check on some of these guys. I don't speak about them on the show because I just don't think that they fit the framework of Locked On HBCU any longer once they depart. But I do check on these guys just because, and every now and then you may hear me mention them. But let's look at Terrell Allen, because what he did for Tennessee State, that's nothing to shrug your shoulders at. Terrell Allen will be extremely difficult for Tennessee State to be able to replace. Let's look at his numbers in relation to the rest of the team. So credited for 28 tackles for a loss, 14.5 sacks. That's in addition to being the second leading tackler on the team. But let's just stick to Allen in his disruption stats. I don't know. It's going to be very difficult for Tennessee State to replace what Allen was able to do. His 28 tackles for a loss were good for 32% of Tennessee State's TFLs. They had 87 of them on a season. The next closest person had 9 as an individual. You look at Allen's 14.5 sacks. That's good for an even 50% of Tennessee State sacks by their entire defense. The next closest person had 5. And the next closest person in both of those statistics is Chris Walker, and he entered the transfer portal on April 30th. So if you're looking at the Tennessee State front 7, if you're looking at their ability to get pressure specifically, those 2 guys who did it better than anybody else along that line, that's going to be tough. That's a very difficult person, and really looking at both of those, it's a very difficult duo to replace. When you look at Monroe Beard, the leading tackler, you have the leading tackler out, the second leading tackler out, the guy with the most sacks, the guy with the second most sacks, the guy with the most tackles for a loss, and the guy with the second most tackles for a loss on your team. And did I mention that you're also losing the FCS Defensive Player of the Year, a.k.a. the Buck Buchanan Award winner, a.k.a. Terrell Allen? Tennessee State is going to have to reload that front 7, and it's not going to be easy. You have talent, sure, but replacing talent like that, talent like Beard, talent like Allen, that's going to be a tall task. But you're out there in Nashville, beautiful city out there in Nashville. You'll be able to find somebody. And if you can't, put me on the plane. But we got 3 HBCU running backs who ain't going to have to be put on the plane anytime soon. They're staying with their team, and they're making it into training camp. So let's check out this triumvirate of running backs as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Making your first listen of the day every day? making all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. I almost made it segment 2, but this is segment 3. This is the end of the show. This is the big shebang. And I have a triumvirate, aka 3 HBCU running backs who are on NFL rosters for training camp. Terrell Jennings, Jarveon Howard, and then Ian Wheeler. I made sure this was just going to be Terrell Jennings at first. I had someone else say, yeah, okay, let's talk about Terrell Jennings. He made it onto a roster. And then as it went on, man, this feels like deja vu. Tell me if I've said something like this before. But I feel like I spoke about these exact guys. I was like, I wanted to talk about him. He made a roster. But anyway, so you have Terrell Jennings, who made a roster from a camp invite. Then you have Jarveon Howard, who is with the Green Bay Packers. And then you also have Ian Wheeler, who was actually requested. I wasn't sure how I was going to get Wheeler in, but I knew that I wanted to request Wheeler in some capacity. Or I knew I wanted to present Wheeler in some capacity, and I was able to do that. But let's start off with Terrell Jennings, because he's the reason that I even started talking about this segment. Terrell Jennings got a camp invite from the New England Patriots, and he was able to turn that into a UDFA contract. And let's give a Drink Champs round of applause for Terrell Jennings making it from camp invite to UDFA. When you're a camp invite, here's the thing, you know what I'm saying? He signed a 3-year, $2.83 million contract with the New England Patriots. To me, very ironic that he signed it with the New England Patriots, 28-3. Just saying. It's ironic seeing that he was a camp invite. They probably counted him out. Probably didn't think that he was going to be able to come back from an insurmountable lead or insurmountable deficit. Right? That's what you're looking at as a camp invite. We're not really looking at you to make the roster. We're looking at you to come in. But you know what? You did what you needed to do. As a camp invite, we're really counting you out, but it's good to have a body. We'll see if you can actually, it's not over for you, but it's not really getting started for you. But then you come back. Then the Atlanta Falcons choke again. 28-3 is no more. And it's cemented in history. Oh, I love messing with Falcon fans. If I could curse on here, I'd say something the Falcons. But I think us grown folks know exactly what I'm saying. Something the Falcons. Okay. That's just what it's going to be. That's just what it's going to be. Shout out to your team. So, what game y'all going to this year? All right. The NFL schedule just dropped 10 minutes ago. So anyway, but no, on a serious note, like not even tying into the Falcons, not even tying to the contract. Shout out to him. I don't know what the guaranteed money is on that, but he's going to cash an NFL paycheck. He's going to get some sort of bread for being in camp. This is phenomenal. You have a player who came in, and I've heard nothing but praise and respect the entire time that I've been doing this show, specifically in the last few months to a year, about Terrell Jennings. This is a player out there in Tallahassee for the FAMU Rattlers who was well-respected, well-loved, and I'm often praised, to be honest with you. So I'm very excited to see that this is in his future. I'm very excited to see that this is the route that he's going with the New England Patriots out there with Gerard Mayo, got himself another black head coach. So I love to see that. And as a camp invite, people did count him out. As a camp invite, nobody expects you to make the team. I'm not saying it never happens. That would be ignorant. But no one's really expecting too much of you. If they were, you would have been a UDFA, right? So when you come from being a training camp invite to being a part of the roster, man, that's big, dog. That's something that I really cannot understate, because in his last year, he had the most yards he had in a single season. He had 5.6 yards per carry. It was the first time in his career that he had averaged over 5 yards per carry. He had 10 touchdowns. He had only had 14 on his career the previous 3 seasons. This is a player who stepped up in his last year in Tallahassee, Florida, and it paid off because he got a camp invite and he was able to showcase that skill set. He said, you know what? If I ain't have Kelvin Dean with me, I might have went for 1,000. No disrespect to Kelvin Dean. I just had to split some time with him. And if I didn't split no time and I was just toting that rock, then maybe I'd have been 1,000-yard running back. Speaking of toting that rock, Jarveon Howard did that. Howard is probably my favorite running back of this class, to be honest. Yeah, Howard is probably my favorite running back just because of his size, his speed. The guy is really good. He signed a UDFA contract with the Packers, and that one's a little bit interesting to me because he went on to the team that has Emmanuel Wilson. So they have an HBCU running back. I think that little battle could be interesting. But I'll tell you what I really love about Jarveon Howard. Jarveon Howard is the player that I'm saying, I'm crossing my fingers, just make it to preseason. because once the preseason starts, I think Jarveon Howard is going to look really good. I think that Howard's going to step out there. He's going to be a one-cut guy. He's going to be very explosive. He's going to be very strong. He's going to run through tackles. I think that if you can just get him to training camp, even if the Packers decide not to keep him, right? If you get Jarveon Howard into the preseason and the Packers decide not to keep him, I think that, and I trust that, Howard will make enough of an impact during those 3 preseason games, specifically the last one when it's just those guys. I think he'll make enough of an impact to make it on somebody's roster, to make it to somebody's practice squad. I really do. I think that this is a talented running back. There's been no HBCU running backs drafted since 1998. Wow. Anyway, then you have Ian Wheeler, who runs a 4.39, jumps 38 on the vert, 38.5 on the vert, jumps 10.5 on the broad. He has return capabilities, and he's on the Bears. Ian Wheeler is another reason we did this, because I was like, you know what? I want to get Wheeler in quick. Ian Wheeler immediately becomes a return threat, especially with the new rules. I was reading an article earlier today about just where he lies within the running back room, and they never spoke about where he lied within the running back room. The name of the article was something about him stealing somebody's job, and it turned out to be the return capabilities. And he was an all-conference return specialist. So I think that having those skill sets immediately lends you. What do we always say is the best route to a roster for all late round guys, and HBCU guys included in this? But all late round guys, if you can play special teams, you are more attractive. Period. I started this off with a dating analogy. I'll keep it here. If you can play special teams, that's the equivalent to having money. It just makes you more attractive to them, doesn't it? They love you that way. Right? Pause. But I appreciate y'all. We're going to go ahead and end it on that. Let's just go ahead and put a pin in that, and let's end it. Tomorrow's episode, we really will look at that Jackson State transfer that we were supposed to do on yesterday's episode, but things just kept coming up. Tomorrow, though, that will be our opening scene no matter what. So you know what, JSU? Come rock with me. Till next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.